Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Or good afternoon, or good morning, depends of the place you are following us. Um, Sorry about the little delay that we have. We had some technical problem here in our side, and for those that are expecting that we are broadcasting from our headquarters, we have a issue in our society, in our headquarters, but we are here. As I was talking to Leo early, no matter what happens, we have the plan B, right? The work should continue, right, Leo?
Yes.
And Leo and I, we already, did our read and our short prayer here in the backstage. We want to go straight to the point, right, Leo? And I hope you all receive the good vibration of this two chapter that Leo is going to bring to us. Leo, please let us
Thank,
know what you're going to bring to us.
thank you, Daniel. Yes, very excited to be back here with each one of you and sharing two more of the chapters of this amazing book, On the Way to a World of Regeneration. Today, in specific, we will be sharing chapters 11 and 12. And I would like to say that chapter 11 is not as long as chapter 12. Chapter 12 is very long. I'm just giving you these highlights before we go into it because I would like to do something a little bit different today. As I was talking to Daniel and as I've mentioned to many of us as well directly at the SSB, these two chapters are very intriguing. And I say intriguing because it gives us a highlight of what's going on behind the scenes towards us, the workers of, of the new dawn, we can call, or any time we try to change our behaviors or to improve our behaviors, we are being attacked. It's nothing for us to feel afraid. Quite the opposite. It's for us to um, take pride on what we're doing and to strengthen our one another on what we need to continue to do. Right. For that, I have a little bit of let's say the change towards the end because if we were to cover both chapters as we usually like to cover with a lot of the passages of the book and everything else, we would be here for at least 4 hours because again the cases are intense. But we'll get there. Um, we are pretty much, I would say, now halfway towards the book, and it's always good for us to remind one another that we need to stop and read the book. It's not that just we go through pages and not really dive into each of the chapters or each of the paragraphs that we read. We really have to digest this information as much as we can. What I usually like to do when I'm reading these chapters is to read, stop, think, and then continue reading, take notes, write on the book, and truly try to apply it to our lives. Because the transition that we're going right now, many of us, we are feeling. And I know we are really going through some difficult moments. And I think that Manuel de Miranda, through the hands of Divaldo Franco, does an amazing job that it really it becomes a tool, it becomes a help, it becomes guidance to all of us to live in this moment of transition. These are the last moments, folks, that many of the spirits of that are disturbed, that are against the work of Christ, or reincarnating once more, and we can say for many of them, unfortunately, for the last time on Earth, on planet Earth, as we have been studying here, and for unfortunately for many of them, and I say this and with my heart stricken as well because it has to do a lot with us, right? But these are the last moments, the last opportunities that they're having to reincarnate here on planet Earth. And if they don't improve on their behaviors, they will be giving an opportunity to reincarnate, obviously, many more, as we have been given, but in a different condition, perhaps in a different planet, because the planet Earth is going through this transition. On that note, let's dive into it. What Manuel de Miranda brings to us. These two chapters are mainly explanation from Manuel de Miranda. Obviously, we see the help of other spirits as well on the spirit world, try to help the spirit location, the spiritist location where they are, but also the work there too, right? So chapter 11, let me go ahead and, okay. Well, just as a highlight, as I like to do, we have covered from the introduction all the way to chapter 10. As we like to highlight again, the chapters or the title of the chapters are amazing, titles, and it's very, it's as good as the content that are in the chapters, right? So today we'll be covering chapter 11, chapter 12, as we said. Chapter 12 entitled The Justice Makers, and the Expanding Experiences, chapter 12, but it also gives a lot of information about these justice makers. So what are these justice makers? What are, what kind of experiences there is Mr. Miranda actually developing, right? Or expanding, if we can say that way. So the justice makers, Manuel de Miranda starts this way. Our group remained active at the hospital, inspiring doctors and assisting them in the gigantic effort of tending to patients arriving in expressive numbers. Some were sent home to wait and return in a few days if further symptoms of the disease developed, but others needed urgent care. I want to stop here and just kind of give a highlight again for those who perhaps haven't watched many of the other sessions. This is actually a work that is being done at a Spiritist center that works as a hospital, as many do, as well as a school in the physical realm. And they were helping many of these individuals that were coming to this location to receive help, right, in Brazil. That doesn't mean that perhaps there are not like spiritual colonies throughout the world. Yes, there are many, as we have studied here, as we have seen in the Father's house, as our Master Jesus have said, there are many houses, right? In many dwellings, right? So these works are spread out throughout the world. Fortunately, we have a spiritist, a medium who can bring these messages from Manuel de Miranda from this location. And it's interesting here to point out that as we have seen the throughout the pandemic, these cases happening, and this is again only a reminder of what has happened in the past, and we know how detrimental this can be to many of us, or it was to many of us, right? The fact that perhaps you have contracted a disease that at the time had no vaccine, and they were sent home, right? Some individuals, okay, I have it now, so what's going to happen to me? Imagine some of these individuals, going through the burden of, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? What's going to happen to my family members? Are they going to contract as well? So imagine the mixed feeling thoughts that many of these individuals went through, right? Of course, we're not here to relive all the difficulties, but I would like to make a point here with something else that we're going to read soon. So just keep that in mind. While it was discussed which emergency medications to use, with uncaring politicians clashing with each other, indifferent to the suffering of the sick, physicians received disturbing orders from hospitals directors who had to alternate between the demands of one or another authority. To add to the madness of, or the, let's say, the self-suffering, or the suffering of many as well, right? Or I should say, a collective suffering. We have these issues as well, where politicians did not help at all. Information was being sent to different hospitals to say, do this or don't do this. Let's not follow this, as we have seen here in the US as well, because every country, even though they had its own peculiarities, they also went through many of the same things that we went here in the US. Oh, should try this, should not try that. And in that, throughout that moment, people were suffering and getting sicker and sicker too. All the while, some patients got worse and others died. Despair reached the masses, and the vibrations that invaded the hospital were of a very low level, mingling anger, fear, insecurity, and desolation. We learn every day how to deal with the different conduct in a developing society whose ethical values are always set aside in view of predominant predominating, lower interest. The point that I would like to make, folks, is how, when we are in distraught, right? When we are going through a tough moment, it's very hard for us to center ourselves and to think and to help and to even, when I say help ourselves and say, look, I have a choice. I can be super worried about this right now, but I can also take the precautions with my mind, with my heart, in terms of thoughts and feelings, to change the environment, right? And this is not easy. This is something that really, we were studying this, it also stood out in such a way that it's very tough, because once more, these individuals, they're going through a disease or contracting a disease that we had very little information on it, and obviously we didn't have vaccine at the time. So along with the difficult that each person was going through, there was also the effects also of those who are in control, in terms of those who are in charge of hospitals, those who are charge of political issues, right? And then we also have, the collective masses coming, vibrating in such a negative way. It did not help, and it's still not helping, right? And we're going to see a little bit more of this, and we're still suffering. I remember very clearly about a year ago, when we were discussing about this matter, that not being pessimistic in this term, but the worst is yet to come, because the psychological issues that we will see, that will present in our society later on, due to this moment that we took very little care of ourselves in terms of our thoughts, our feelings, is still yet to produce the ripple effects, the most dangerous ripple effects that we will see. So we really have to watch out. We really have to help ourselves and help others as well. And we promise that towards the end, we will show something that at least Spiritism can bring to us and guide our hearts, right, on how to present ourselves or to behave a little bit better. Let's give continuation to this. Virtual communications made a great contribution in getting out, the information that needed to reach the masses. But even there, the misuse of the remarkable use, resulted in great harm, bringing fear to those lacking discernment and to others with little religious faith and trust in humanity. While rampant, fake news spread information, tragedy, misleading information, and denunciations that confuse even more the internet users. Let's take a step back here. Did it stop? No, we're still seeing the same issues right now. And I want to take a step back, because a lot of information, a lot of the contents that we see online right now, and I'm not going to name the different vehicles that are used, right? But many of the social media vehicles are still being used by what we call spiritists or spiritualists. Use the spiritist information in a negative way. When we say in a negative way, it's because it's not really to bring consolation, or sometimes it is meant to bring consolation, but it's very doesn't bring much help, in to say the least, because it's being used in a way to exalt the person who is presenting. It's being used to exalt a group of people, diminish others as well, and do harmful things, perhaps not in the now, because sometimes it can be very minuscule, but when we group many things that are negative or of a very little harm, if we can say that way, after a while, it can do a lot of damage. And these are the things that we're going to be talking about later on, where the spirits, the not so evolved spirits, they latch on to bring way more suffering than we can imagine, right? And then we also enter into Manuel de Miranda brings also this idea of fake news, how was misleading people, the different tragedy as well, in terms of numbers and things that were shown to us, and it still shows to us that the fear that it was actually implanted in our homes, right, as we were to turn on the and still is the news, perhaps, or what we read, and all of these negative things. Once this immense storm passes, we will have very serious problems regarding survivors' behaviors, principally those concerning human dignity and the truthness of information. Emotional and spirit obsession disorders resulting from these days of social isolation from those not used to being in the house all the time, having opted for parties, battling, and disconcerting behaviors before, will add to the serious spiritual suffering. So we see here again, Manuel de Miranda saying, after the storm passes, we will still see the damages, right? Much like if perhaps you have been, you go through the storm, all the difficulties that the storm brings afterwards, right? The debris, broken trees and all those things that requires a lot of work to fix it, right? Or to clean the area. So let us think about this, because when we think that, okay, this came to help us to change, perhaps to a degree, I like to believe still that it came and helped many of us, especially many of us that who unfortunately lost a loved one, and we now give, let's say, we have a different approach towards life, right? So there are a lot of good things that have happened, but we also have to take in consideration that the isolation and the different things that happen also will bring a lot of despair to all of us. But let us continue. Our commitment to duty also included preventive measures for the days to come. Although it will still take a little while to be established, they will create the proper basis consisting the Spiritist teachings to serve as support for the construction of a new social order. So they are working, right? The Spirit's centers, along with the spirit world, the spirit directors of Spiritist centers, and I dare to say, not only in Spiritist centers, but also houses of faith, right? Faith organizations in general, they are being guided, because a lot of these places, they do also serve as as a, an outpost, right? If we can say, to help others and to guide others in this new beginning. In these days, where illness and behaviors are getting worse, many individuals surfaced in the Spiritist movement, eager to help but without any culture and doctrinal preparation. They use the internet to extend consolation, guidance, and new from the spirit world in messages completely devoid of legitimacy, intended to make themselves important, calling attention to their ego rather than enlightening and helping the needy. As we mentioned before, the social medias were taking to a level, unprecedented level, that we cannot even, we don't need to go into details, but that it was not solitary, right? It was not to help others, but to bring attention to the ego of those individuals or group of individuals that were utilizing the Spiritist message or of a spiritualist message to exalt themselves. True Spiritists, and this is a part of also we're going to bring it towards the end, but Manuel de Miranda brings here as well, that true Spiritists are discreet in their activities, always watchful of their bad inclinations. They strive to be simple and kind, shielding themselves from unwielding flattery. And I would like to say here that this is not Spiritist only. Perhaps it's a quality of a true Spiritist, but it should be a quality of a good person, right? That what they're doing, yes, eventually, whenever we're helping others, it will help us too. But it's important to think that the work should be the proposal should be to help others, and in turn we're helped as well. Anytime somebody stops and read a message, right, before prayer, guess what? Yes, you're helping others, and in turn it will help yourself as well. And the same thing is with the propagation of being a spiritualist person, the propagation of religion, whatever religion that may be, or the Spiritist teachings, is certainly a help, but it should be directly at others, not to exalt ourselves. They strive to be simple and kind, shielding themselves from unwitting flattery. This is Only possible, however, with firm conviction in the immortality of the soul and the destiny everyone is building for the future. Mediums, especially, must behave of terrifying revelation, contributing instead with hope and peace so as to encourage everyone to engage in dignified behavior, even if in the face of embarrassing situations. True faith is present at all times in believers, guiding them towards the good and the fraternity that must prevail in all relationships. And he brings this amazing reminder about mediums here, right? Where we should watch out as mediums. We should be on alert 24/7, right? Because the connections that we have, the connections that we can establish very easily, is of very different from the someone who is not in certain in this, let's say, realm, in terms of being the medium between two worlds, as well as on how we behave ourselves. We perceive, for example, that the president of the host institution, this is the institution where they were, a really good man, was fiercely hounded by a group of spirits who called themselves the justice makers. Oh, okay. Now we get to the justice makers, right? What are these justice makers, folks? When I read it first, the title of the chapter, I was like, justice makers. Okay, are these good individuals? Are these somebody who's trying to help? Because the justice makers, you're thinking, okay, they're making justice. Well, we don't make justice, right? And then you start thinking about it, and it's like, what's going on here and why they're there? This is going to lead us into chapter 12 as well for us to understand a little bit more. But let's see, what are these justice makers? And I dare to ask you now, why does a president of the host institution, who is doing an amazing jobs, for those of you who have followed us thus far, we see that this Spiritist Center, where they were, it's a very serious location. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Manuel de Miranda and Mr. Spinelli, as we have seen, and many other spirits as well, wouldn't be there helping maintain the work and maintain the help towards others, right? Just the idea of helping others that already attract the good spirits to come to our aid. So let us try to understand a little bit more. The group was comprised by many of them who declared themselves of having been wronged by the divinity. So a group of spirits hounding or obsessing, right, people, workers of this institution, right? And they gave themselves they put themselves in this position because they believed they were wronged by divinity, by God. And throughout time, and Manuel de Miranda explains how they worked, right? How they maintained themselves throughout time. They ended up gathering together in a low order community in the spirit world, organizing themselves with the elements they could get their hands on in order to carry out the objective they harbored in their deranged minds. So imagine that these spirits are very unhappy, to say the least, and they want to persecute anyone who wants a change from themselves. And we're going to see a little bit more of this. And they gather because of their attunement in this, let's say, low order community, and they gather from the environment where they are whatever they can to construct their appearances, their location. Much like if we were to analyze, okay, when you go and try to build a shed or a home, whatever it is, or put a garden together, what do? We gather the elements, right, that we need in order for us to construct whatever we have in mind, right, whatever we have in our hearts. Unfortunately, these spirits, they're such of a low order that whatever was presented to them was also of a low order, because that's all they could get to, and their objectives to get as much as possible to create this environment of darkness, of perturbation, right, towards others as well. Again, we're not going too much in details. This is something that we invite everyone to stop, read the chapters, and get more information from it, but it's to give you a glimpse of where we are and what we're dealing with. Not to be afraid, but to be watchful at least, right? Because when we are giving the opportunity for us to learn and to understand, we certainly can take our precautions. It's a choice, right, that we can make. And it's interesting, before we go into chapter, well, actually, there's a little bit more. So we'll stop in a little one in a little bit. The issue with this with spirits was based on a feeling of spontaneous hatred. This is their characteristics. They saw them as enemies, that is, individuals who were dedicated to the master of Nazareth and the ethics of love. Truth and goodness attracted many of those that were the object of their hostility. Thus, they persecuted the Spiritists mercilessly with resentment and violence, striking their Achilles heels, the weakness and vulnerability that exists in all of us. I'm going to read a little bit more and then we go back to this. The divine laws allow this to happen because the Lord's workers are still spirits in the process of atonement, of purifying many wrongs committed against the cosmic balance they still need to readjust. In turn, they were assisted insofar as they adopt a Christian behavior, did not allow themselves to be seduced by their old vices or by the moral faults resulting from their old vices, or by the moral faults resulting from their current conduct. What is Mr. Miranda is trying to say? We have heard this already, and we have mentioned this here. We're now transitioning to serving something greater than ourselves. However, those whom we connect in the past, they don't like our change. They don't want us to, they don't see as a changed individual or changed person. Well, Leo, okay, he's saying that he's A, B, or C right now, but in the past, he did this or that against me. So what kind of change is this? What is this thing? What a lie, right? This is how these individuals um, uh, uh, or see us, right? And I'm using myself as an example because we're all inserted on this. This applies to me as it applies to many of us in many different ways as well. Much like if I had a buddy that I used to go out every Saturday with them, and then with him or her, and then after a while, and say, you know what? There's this really nice location that I came in contact with on a Thursday that we hold a a study of a book, and they also have a really nice talk on Saturdays. I would like to start going there instead of us going out to do whatever it is. Let's not label here. What's going to happen? This person will start developing an adverse feeling towards me, and as well as towards an adverse feeling towards the institution that now took me away from that every Saturday evening, right, program that we had established before, right? People are not in the same level, and then it creates these disturbances. The thing is that each one of us, as he's saying here, we have a weak point or vulnerable point that we still connect with ourselves of the past. I'll say this again. We still connect with ourselves of the past, the old Leo, the old situations that we encountered that is still inside of us something, but we're trying to put that aside, right? And that's how they connect with us, right? So we are being guided by our the Creator. The divine laws allows it to happen for us to connect with them, and they help us as long as we help ourselves, right? So it's quite a bit here, but I ask you, I implore you, I beg you to go and read the chapter because it will give you way more information than what we are covering here. Many individuals have noble sentiments and want to rehabilitate themselves. However, due to the indiscipline and convenience, they do not apply the same commitment to overcome their primitive tendencies, falling into the well-designed traps of these strange characters who attribute themselves the right of doing evil for their victory and command over earthly lives. One of their utopias, the offspring of pride and horror. Cruel criminals, released from the unfortunate regions in the spirit world to take advantage of these last chances, as we have said earlier, have been reincarnating for some years now. Regrettably, they are further defiling the world with their choices of behaviors, which is to say, are compromising their spiritual future. They devise absurd laws to legitimize the tremendous and unspeakable crimes of the destruction of the family, corrupting, corruption of the youth, the respect for ethics, and any dignified procedures in favor of frivolity and deceitful sensual pleasures, leading to a regression in conduct that had already been left behind by moral evolution. It is regrettable to see the existential emptiness, the lack of interest for the noble aspect of life, and the preference for addictive drugs, reckless sex, and victimhood, as well as self disregard through extreme sport, exalting egoic madness alongside perversions and their consequences as emotional disorders and psychiatric illnesses. Illness. I want to stop here, folks, because this last paragraph that I'm bringing here, which is not the last paragraph of this chapter, brings a lot of information to all of us. And we need to watch out to all of these reminders that Manuel de Miranda brings to us, right? Let's take a step here. And I know we're halfway already into the time that it's allotted to us, but this is extremely important, right? Unspeakable crimes of destruction of the family. The family cell is being attacked. I would say more than 24 hours a day. It's just the attacks towards this institution is happening in such a rate right now that is very difficult, and it's very subtle. It's little by little. The ideas are being implemented in such a way that after it's repeated in our minds, in our hearts so many times, we start to believe it's okay to go against son and daughter, or to go against parents, to have disregards towards grandparents, or perhaps to live an indifferent life in terms of how we should conduct ourselves. Perhaps even listen to the elderly, right? And to give them the benefit of the doubt, to say, this individual have lived a little bit more than I have. Yes, perhaps, I am also an old soul. I have incarnated as many times as my parents, but they gave me the bread and butter of every single day, right? And I need to listen a little bit. And I'm not saying this perhaps kids towards parents, but using the example in a way where we can start to go back to our morals, right? Because if God gave us the family to reincarnate into, there must be a reason for it. And anything that comes against this cell, this foundation of society, we have to watch out. We truly have to be very adamant about the what's coming against these attacks. Corruption of the youth, right? We see now drugs. We see now the idea that everything is okay. They need to experience. No, they don't. I'm sorry, but there has to be a moment where we need to tell ourselves we don't need to allow the worst to happen in order for us to learn, or for the kids to learn. The issue is laws nowadays, perhaps the way kids are being conducted in such a way that that it's not okay anymore for us to say, look, this is wrong, right? Interesting enough, I was actually at my place of work this week, obviously working, thank God. And this is I would say a grown up of perhaps my age, maybe a little bit younger. And we were trying to talk to this individual, but this individual was also on the phone and obviously talking to someone. And he shouted, to his father, because we came back, we got to know that it was his father, because he said, I just told you now, father, just send the file, whatever information he was looking for. But in such a way that I was like, wow, if you speak with your father in public that way, whether your father is present or not, imagine how you're going to treat others as well. So that was very disrespectful. And we see here the disrespect for ethics and any dignified procedures, right? in favor of what? A quick hit, a frivolity and deceitful sensual pleasure, right? Leading to regression in conduct. So many of these things that is happening now, folks, we need to watch out, right? The things that are watching through TV, the shows, the program, the inclusion of certain things. We need to include a lot in our lives, right? But the inclusion of certain things that perhaps, it's an experiment. No, we need to take a step back and truly analyze what we're connecting with, because, and I say this because we all have choices. We all can do whatever we want. However, these are the gateways or the open doors in which these individuals, the justice makers, are connecting with us. There's no other way that somebody will knock on my door saying, "Oh, Leo, are you hosting a party?" If I don't send my invites to other people. Sometimes the invites are very explicit, sometimes are very implicit, right? The way I behave, the way I think, the way I connect with others, right? And not everybody will knock on my door if they don't have any business to conduct with me or to take care with me, right? So let these words, and this is again not Leo, but this is a reminder of Manuel de Miranda telling us that we need to take a step back and analyze our behaviors. Let's move on then on expanding experiences that will bring a little bit of more elucidation into of what these justice makers are. Actually, I'll take a step here and I will kind of give you a highlight, because as we go into it, we're going to move on into the final stages. They start analyzing that these attacks are happening at the Spiritist Center, right? And they bring two cases here, and we're going to go through them. That then later on, we're not going to bring this part of it. Because of the prayer of one of the individuals, they go and they bring the medium of the Spiritist Center along with the group, the mediumistic group or individuals that works at that function, to treat the spirits, these justice makers. It's very beautiful how they are treated, and it's a connection that we all have with them. Excuse me. Based way back when during the Crusades. So let us listen to what Mr. Miranda has to say about this. Gumersindo dedicated himself to the institution with unusual commitment. A married father, he was facing marital tribulations at home. His wife, easily influenced by the spirits and rebelling against the principle of spiritism, created many problems for him, pushing him further towards the beautiful spiritual refuge of this institution. His children, in turn, were more influenced by their mother, as their father, a civil servant, divided his time between his paid duties and his spiritist social work. At first, he had tried very hard to bring the kids to the institution's program of visualization for children, but his wife always resisted the idea. She claimed to belong to another religion, but as normally happens, her conduct did not attest to it. Every time the forces of evil want to harm Gomesindo, they use his tormented wife, one of his two young sons, or the little daughter. He often received direct help from Spiritist benefactors through Malvina, who followed his plight with support and friendship. During the time we stayed at the institution he administered, we observed his silent suffering. In the meantime, guided by one justice makers, his wife Clementina accused him of being in love with the medium, which would explain his devotion to Spiritism. After so many accusations from the wife, he came to understand that it was a plot to demoralize the institution's work and denigrate the Spiritist teachings. Realizing that it was a disturbing mediumistic interference, he avoided the discussion that always ended in verbal confrontations with his wife and started to pray, surrender his life to the dissemination of the truth. So we see here that the issue became much bigger. It's not just against one person, right? It's not just against the the conduct of one individual, or perhaps the consequences that may bring to one individual or a group of people. Because now we're talking about the Gomesindo as well as this other medium, that the wife was saying that it was actually in love, or the his husband, I'm sorry, her husband was in love with, right? But it was the institution. Imagine the defamation to the institution for somebody to come and say, well, my husband is going to this place to meet with this woman, or this, this woman with this man, whatever would. Imagine how many problems this wouldn't bring to those perhaps that go to the institution trying to find some relief, but in the same token, hearing from somebody something that, number one, it wasn't true, and hearing from somebody that there was some kind of crazy business going on at the Spiritist Center, right? So now the demoralization was towards the institution, because they want to stop the work from happening. As Daniel said earlier today, no matter what, we're going to try our best to conduct the work. No matter what, we'll get to the point, crawling points, right, to present or to help someone, to guide someone with this teaching. But the highlight here is the following, folks. Even when we are trying our best, even when we are doing the best that we can as an individual, they don't attack us directly, but they will attack those who are connected with us: husband, wife, children, father, mother, work, right? We see so many issues happening at the days that we have to present ourselves to the Spiritist Center well, centered. And our bosses, sometimes they are the best medium ever to bring in balance in our lives before such a meeting, because they don't want this work to happen. So again, the attacks are many, and they're coming from every side. And we have the key in order for us to protect ourselves. But it's important that we really pay attention to this. And it's so unfortunate that perhaps the wife could be helping Gormesindo. Perhaps the wife could be helping the kids to see the benefits also of what is behind the Spiritist Center, right? At least to bring comfort, at least to bring a moment of prayer to those individuals. But unfortunately, she was connecting with her past, as we have said earlier, right? Clementina was connecting with the old Clementina, right? Still harboring some of this feeling, especially jealousy, right? And that's how the justice makers connected with her. I got to check my time here. We're running out of it, but we'll get there. And then Manuel de Miranda says, such a scandal would affect the thousands of people who benefited from the institution's resources, and he did not know how to act with serenity and in defense of the truth. Gurmesinu does what? He starts to pray. His prayer reached us in the institution's spirit guide, following his mental plea, which transmitted strength and courage to him for the confrontation with the spirit obsessor. So he starts to pray. He changed the vibration, as he had done several times, right, with the wife, when he was in this curl with the wife. And he did it again in such a way that now it's like, okay, we need to do something, right? These are the higher mentors. I'm paraphrasing the higher mentor saying, all right, enough is enough. We need to go and help both sides now, because we know that he's not a victim, right? And the other side also needs help, right? Interestingly enough, look what happens. Strangely, and this is Mr. Miranda's word, he got a call from a friend in despair going through a domestic alteration of the same nature, rooted in a sickly and disconcerting jealousy. The caller told him that he could no longer stand the situation. Although devoted to his wife and two little children, she constantly, ferociously accused him of marital infidelity. Again, because he was also a worker of the Spiritist Center. What does Gramasindo do? He further suggested reading the Gospel according to Spiritism by Allan Kardec in order to calm down and consequently also calm his wife. His words were filled with such a sincerity and empathy that our leader Spinelli suggests that some of us, including Claudio, visited this distressed couple. This is the moment that they go and they embrace the couple. They also bring them to this mediumistic meeting happening in the middle of the night to bring these two couples as well as those individuals who are attacking them. Get this, folks. It's beyond our comprehension here that these attacks are happening in such a level. One could think that we usually spiritists we think that perhaps if somebody who is partying, doing something, or connecting with a strange idea of robbing something or doing something negative. No, these attacks are happening towards people who are well intended. They're there working, they're there serving the community, right? They're praying with these people. And these are the things that are happening. So we need to watch out. You and I, everyone, because look what the Manuel de Miranda says. What intrigued me the most was to realize that these persecutors did not need to settle any debts between them, and those in need of bettering themselves are automatically included among those who displease them, and for that reason must be eliminated. No reason whatsoever. Excuse me. No reason whatsoever. All they need to see is that perhaps Leo is trying to better himself, and they will be attacked. But then one may say, Leo, so what's the point? Why am I going to better myself? Well, if I don't do, it's no obviously my choice, right? But if I don't do it, I don't get to evolve. I don't get to live in a better world. I don't get to uh, change my environment. So my kids, the kids of my kids, perhaps could be me reincarnated on this planet if I'm granted that to do so, to live a decent life in this planet. So we have a choice. We have the responsibility towards a spiritual life in terms of the 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 reality of reincarnation, right, in this planet. We're all workers of this new era that we have been studying. The the perversity of the spiritually ill seeks support in this absurdity to continue the program of revenge against humanity that one day, through the action of reckless individuals, similar to their own actions at this moment, cruelly harmed them. This is one of the essential reasons for the disharmony that sweeps the planet and brings restlessness to lives in tumult, to lives in tumult, resulting from nihilistic and self-serving philosophies that in all times have turned against order and human beings' equilibrium. So the predominance of primitive instincts characterize these days, but they also contain the sentiments of beauty and love that continue to thrive, even though frequently smothered by the cruelty of tormented souls. We're coming to an end here. As I said before, I recommend that you read how the treatment develops. When I say the treatment, is that the mediumistic meeting where both of these couples they are brought as well their obsessors to have a conversation, and we will learn that these individuals we have a connection with them in the past, these justice makers, right? Perhaps we were parting with them in the past, and now they're looking at it and say, no, you're not this, you're not that. And how they connect with us, it's exactly through our shortcomings, on how we behave, on how I connect with the old Leo within me, right? That also wants justice to happen, right? Also, when I look on TV and I see perhaps a politician that I don't like, and I send a bad vibration to that individual, perhaps the boss that was incoherent with us at work, and we say something negative, or we speak about them, right, when they're not listening or watching, right, with our minds. It doesn't have to be spoken directly with another individual, but we need to watch out these things, right? We need to change our behaviors. Why is it happening? Why this primitive instincts? It caught my attention. I brought this question from the Spirit's book. What is the cause that leads humankind to war? Because if we were to think about this, this is war, people. We're talking about Ukraine, Russian, this and that, all the wars that we see, right, in the world. But why do we have wars, right? And this is something that is mentioned by Manuel de Miranda, that We thought as a society, and this is the society of the globe, that after Second World War, we would cool off, right? There would be no more ideas of war on the planet, but we saw many other ones. And I'm talking about Balak wars, yes, and we're talking about the war of COVID-19, right? The wars that we are facing within ourselves and the wars that we're seeing in our homes too, right? So why is this? And the spirits responded on chapter 6 in the law of destruction, third part of the spirit's book. The predominance of the animal nature over the spiritual, and the satisfaction of their passions. In the state of barbarity, nations only know the right of the strongest, and that is why war is a normal state for them. As humans evolve, war will become less frequent since they will avoid its causes, and when it does become necessary, they will know how to make it more humane. Despite the fact that we can go into this idea, wait a minute, how can a war become more humane, right? And we see some of these examples now, but it's the animal nature. The reason it happens is the predominance of the animal nature over the spiritual one. We are more connected to matter. We're more connected with our instincts than we are spiritual beings, spiritualized beings. So let us change this behavior. Let us say, instead of barking, instead of biting back, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to let it cool off before I react, right? Let me act. Let me be in control, right? And for those, that study a little bit of war and whatnot, the best strategy is what? Is attack. But we need to attack with love, right? We need to attack with a different ideal of with a better strategy, right? So let us change this idea. So with all of this in mind, we have about 4 more minutes before we get to the hour, and I wanted to bring something a little bit different for all of us. We're talking about our behaviors, how we behave, and how these behaviors affect us. And when I say affect us, because it allows us to connect to higher minds or to negative minds, depending on what we're connecting with, depending on what we are trying to change within ourselves. We know that the fact is we're all connected, right? We know that perhaps even when we work for goodness, we will still be attacked, right? We saw the example here. There's no way to run. Because when I was thinking about this, I'm like, okay, so I need to speak about this to our audience, our public. I was puzzled myself, right? And I was thinking, how can we change this? Should we be afraid? Should we be, cowards, right? And say, no, I got to be careful now. I shouldn't be speaking about these things. No, we got to continue. We got to help one another, right? We have to press on, because as one of the other elements that we learn with Spiritism as well is that the predominance of evil in the world, in the planet Earth, happens because the good is very weak, right? And we are not assertive, saying this is what I would like to see, right? This week, it's interesting enough, one of us, I can't remember who sent it, a video of a man, not to go too deep into it, saying that intelligent people, they know what they want, but a wise person, they know what they do not want. I know it's a little bit of a tricky ideal, right? Wait a minute, do I know what I want? No, I don't. But if I at least know what I do not want, i.e., suffering, discord, uh, you know, uh, um, uh, unhappy moments in my life, I will do everything that I can to avoid those moments. And here's the token that I would like to bring to everyone. It's a passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism, of a chapter entitled "Be Perfect." It's item 3 of the chapter, of chapter 17, right? What I would like to do is this. We will read this whole thing, and then we'll make a couple comments. I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to read continuously. And I would like to ask you to read this passage at least, at least once a week. This is what I would like to ask you. And if I can ask for anything for the rest of this, these moments that we're going to be sharing right here, maybe I will ask more, but that we are sharing these chapters here of this book is for us to read at least once a week this passage, and if not, and if a little bit more, the passage that comes right after that talks about perfect spiritist or the spiritist conduct, if we can say it that way, right? So why moral persons? Why are we reading this? Because this is the guideline, and we can, as we're going to see at the end, the teaching of the Spirit is that these are not all of the qualities of a moral person, but by doing this, we will get to a much better place than we are right now, and we will help these other individuals that are attacking us, whether we're being good or not, to also calibrate themselves, to also get into this psychosphere of becoming a moral person as well, right? Once more, Be Perfect, chapter 17 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, item 3. I will read it to its entirety, and then we'll make a couple comments, and then we'll open for questions and comments, okay? So, moral persons. Truly moral persons are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in its greatest purity. If they question their conscience about their actions, they ask themselves if they have violated this law, if they have done any evil, if they have done all the good they could, if they have willingly disregarded any opportunity to be useful, if anyone might have a complaint about them, and finally, if they have done unto others everything they would like to have done unto themselves. They have faith in God and in God's goodness, justice, and wisdom. They know that nothing happens without God's permission, so they submit to the divine will in everything. They have faith in the future. Thus, they place the spiritual possessions above temporal ones. They know that all the vicissitudes of life, all its sorrows, and all its disappointments are trials or expiations, and they accept them without complaining. Persons imbued with the sentiment of charity and love for their neighbor do the good for its own sake without expecting anything in return. And they repay evil with good, defend the weak against the strong, and always sacrifice their own interests to the interests of justice. They find their satisfaction in the benefits they spread around, the service they render, the happiness they promote, the tears they dry, and the consolation they provide to the afflicted. Their first impulse is to think of others before thinking of themselves, and to attend to the interest of others before their own. The selfish, on the other hand, calculate the profits and losses entailed in every generous act. Moral persons are kind, humane, and benevolent towards all regardless of race or creed, because they regard all people as their brothers and sisters. They respect all sincere convictions that others might hold to, and they do not anatomize those who do not think like they do. In all circumstances, charity is their guide. They tell themselves that those who harm others with malevolent words, who hurt others' feelings with their pride and disdain, who do not recoil from the idea of causing suffering or difficulty, however slight, when it could be avoided, fail in their duty of love for their neighbor and do not deserve the Lord's clemency. They hold no hatred or rancor or desire for vengeance. Following Jesus' example, they forgive and forget offenses and remember only good deeds because they know that they will be forgiven according to how they themselves have forgiven. They are indulgent towards others' weaknesses, for they know that they themselves need indulgence. And they recall these words of Christ: "Let him whom is without sin cast the first stone." They never take pleasure in searching for defects in others or in calling attention to them. If necessity forces them to do so, they always look for the good that might mitigate the evil. They study their own imperfections and strive incessantly to combat them. All their efforts are focused on being able to say to themselves tomorrow that they are better than they were yesterday. And to finalize, they do not seek to exalt their spirit or talent at the expense of others. Instead, they seize every opportunity to point out what is praiseworthy in many others, in other people. They do not gloat over their wealth or their personal advantages, for they know that everything that has been given to them can be taken away. They use but do not abuse the possessions that have been accorded to them, for they know that they are a trust for which they will have to render an accounting, and that the worst use of them in regard to themselves would be to use them to satisfy their passions. If the social order has placed others under their tutelage, they treat them with kindness and benevolence because they are their equals before God. They use their authority to lift their morale and not to squash them with their pride. They avoid anything that could render their subordinates' position more painful. Those who are subordinate, on the other hand, understand the duties of their position and are scrupulous in consciously fulfilling them. See chapter 17, item 9. Finally, moral persons respect in their fellow beings all the rights arising from the laws of nature. In the same way, they wish their own to be respected. This is not a list of all the qualities that define moral persons, but whoever makes an effort to possess them is on the road that leads to all the others. There it is, folks. This is actually the token that I would like to offer you and to remind you to read as well, right? Because when we are going through these tribulations, it's not by chance, we know. There's no injustice, but the ability to rehabilitate ourselves, the opportunity to also rehabilitate others that are walking the walk with us. And I say walking the walk because we're vibrating accordingly. Because if we didn't have any connection with them in the past, or if we're not connecting with the old being inside of us as often as we do, we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't be facing these difficulties, right? So we need to trust in God, as it says in the beginning of the message. We need to be of such a moral standard that we know that God will not give us what we cannot bear, and that God will also give us the tools that, excuse me, that God will, and God does give, and God will give us the tools that we need in order for us to ascend and become a better individual. In order for us to change the environment, in order for us to get to this world of regeneration, we need to regenerate these connections. We need to regenerate what has been before us, right? Because we made choices. We exercise our free will, but we exercise our free will in a negative way, unfortunately. And we say in a negative way, it's not because we are to be deemed or doomed from the universe. No, it's because we did not know any better. In many cases, we did know, but because of our passions that it still lingers inside of us, we made mistakes, and now they are to be corrected, right? So we hope that the message, even though the cases are very difficult ones, and we see the attacks that are going on towards individuals that are helping our Master Jesus, are still ongoing, right? We know that the message also can be very difficult because we still see and we're being reminded of the continuation or let's say the ripple effects of the pandemic, right? But much work to be done, much help that we're receiving from the other side, and that we will come out of this much better in the future, right? As long as we apply ourselves and we don't do the same mistakes of the past, right? And to live a joyful life as well. That's what we wish to each one of us. And we, to close this, I would like to wish all the fathers as well. Tomorrow, I like to always mark the time of our sessions with a holiday or something to see when we so we have a feeling where we are in the world in time during the year. So happy Father's Day for everyone. Since we were talking about this institution of family, right, of the togetherness, the foundation of our society, right? I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of this and help ourselves grow in any way possible. So thus far, we have covered from the introduction all the way up to chapter 12. We still have another 8 chapters to close on. This is much past now, half of the book. We ask you to please read it. We ask you to please connect with us, send questions, comments, and we're dying to hear about your questions and comments that you may have. I know we don't have much time, but I'll pass the word to Daniel so we can actually connect with us here with all the questions that we may have had.
Thank you, Leo. Wonderful presentation, and I wish we have more time so we can go to the comment and the questions that we have received here. And this chapter really, like, we need time to processing all this information, right, Leo? Because how many families, how many institution of goodness has been victim of those kind of attack. And here,
Mhm.
Manuel de Miranda is bringing the mechanism. We are not here in a position to judge or to say that we are victims, but at least if we know how these attacks happen, we can prevent, right?
Mhm.
So, and I think the idea of this book is to make us aware that things happen uh, not that things that happens in our life sometimes is the cause is very subtle, right? And we forget to pay attention those suggestions, those little behaves that will end up in bring great calamity. Calamity in the sense that destruction of relationships, right? Destruction of institution that is trying to help others, right? But I would like to go to our comment and questions, and of course, our friends from the SSB are here, plus other friends that also are following us from Brazil, from other parts of the planet. So I will go in the order that we have received the comment and the question. So first, I would like to just put this comment from Kirsten when she said, "I just wanted to add that." Dr. Miranda also uses the term justice makers in another book of his called, psychological and spiritual obsession disorder, right? So it's just, added information. So
I'm
this,
smiling here, Daniel, real quick, because Kirsten has already made some points, some very subtle points for Leo to also bring this book next.
wow.
Yes.
Yeah, you see. Wow, maybe you and her, so also like put her in the spotlight, right? And a comment from a friend from Brazil, Fatima Machado. She said, "Hey, Brazil here. Thank you, Brazil." By the way, Leo, you said Father's Day, but Father's Day here in the US. So I don't know if Father's Day another place. Brazil is in August, right?
In
Second
August, yes.
Sunday, August. So, um, hi, Brazil here. Wonderful book by Dr. Miranda, by Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda and Divaldo Franco. We know that many spiritual institutions in Brazil and some of here in the US and probably in Europe are right now in this time studying this book. So that's a good thing, right? So we are bringing this in English, but there is group doing this in Portuguese, in Spanish, and I hope as more people get this information out there for those that probably are not aware of this kind of mechanism, right? So that's great. So let us go to our first question here, and I would like Leo to, if you can, go very briefly to each question because we have many questions here, and
Mhm.
we have pretty much like 20 minutes to go. And the first question here is by Paula Schmidt. Hey, Paula, thank you for plug and you know join us in this presentation. And she says, and she asks, when these lower order spirits reincarnate, do they participate in the planning as in Nosula? And if not, how do they get in? I think Paula is bringing here, Leo, that, for example, Nosula has a department of reincarnation, right?
Mhm.
So she's concerned about those kind of spirit also go to that plane, that same, a colony that is prepared to reincarnate and bring all this. So what your comment on that? Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Paula. And Paula, I'm not connecting or saying that these spirits are animals. No, please. I'm answering right there, then and there. Okay, they are not. To answer your question straight to the point, no. But let us utilize the example of the predominance of the animal tendencies that we saw earlier here, right? Much like the animals, they were not in a allowed to give an idea on how they would like to reincarnate. The animals are prepared by high order spirits to go through their successive lives, right, in the physical body. And I'm talking about a spirit principle, right, spiritual principle that is reincarnating. These individuals, unfortunately, they're not in the right mind to say, you're going to go to this hospital, you're going to receive the medication. No, the medication is given to them automatically, right? So that in some ways, certain shocks can happen so that they wake up and say, wow, this is something new. I'm going to try something new. Because if they were given the opportunity to prepare themselves, what would they choose? They would choose the same thing that they're choosing right now, which is to attack, which is to create discord. They would say, no, I'm not going to reincarnate with the person who hurt me in the past. No, right? So to answer your question is no. The preparation is done a little bit more in an off basis by higher minds that want them to prevail on their new reincarnation. Unfortunately, because the sickness is so within their bodies or their minds that they still are connecting with us in such a way, right? But to answer your questions, they are not connected. This ability, this responsibility, let's say, to choose or to be part of the reincarnatory plan, or for higher minds or people who are prepared to perhaps give a sentence or two and say, no, I don't want this, right? At least to say, I don't want this. I think this is going to hurt me, or perhaps if I go through this, it's going to be so heavy. Can you please, take pity on me, right? But not in these situations. I hope this helps, and we can take this on an off basis more to work on this, because there is not only Nostular, but other books by Andrea Luiz that goes through about that explain this a little bit further down.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. Thank you, Paula, for your question. Yes, the next one comes from us. And it's just like for you to comment more about this preventive measure to support the construction of a new social order. What is this about? When they mention new social, because we have heard, this terminology a lot lately. So Manuel de Miranda mentioned this in the chapter, I think chapter 11. What is this
Daniel, very
preventive
good,
measure?
very good, very good. They don't give directly answers to what it is that we have to do, because that would be inflicting on our free will. The closest thing that I could find that it came to mind, because I was also questioning myself, what can we do? Is to follow what we brought towards the end, the teachings of the gospel according to Spiritism, to become a more moral individual, right? To dignify ourselves through our actions, to explain to others on how to do it through our actions, right? Through our constant and progressive, repetitive behaviors, good behaviors, that, okay, if I can do this, you can do it too, right? It much like someone who goes to college, gets a degree, showing others, oh, look, if I did, you can do it as well. God did not give me the ability to, or made me more intelligent than you. Anybody can do this, right? There are some impediments that we see based on our past and whatnot, but for the most part, we all have the choices. We all have the ability to make better choices for ourselves. So that is the reason why, and I'm glad this question is being brought. We brought this passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism. To me, besides the question that Kardec asked, how Jesus saw or understood charity, right? Benevolence towards the imperfection of others, right? Forgiveness of offenses, indulgence, right?
Mhm.
this is it. This is the guideline that we can follow. I don't think there is anything else that we can follow. Well, there are many other things that we can follow, but there's so many ideas there. If we choose just one paragraph, I think we're on the right path here. That's why I ask everyone, read it once a week.
Mhm. Yeah, no, makes sense. I think that those guidelines, and interesting is that at the end they say this does not encompass everything, right? I was like, what? What are you talking about, right? Okay, thank you, Leo. Dan Kissing asked a question here, and this is related to the corruption generation, right? It seems like every generation has their own way to corrupt the youth. In the 60s, 70s, and even right, even nowadays. So, are these spirits present in every generation?
Yes, great question, Kirsten, and it leads me to an analogy that I always like to make. Right? Yes, they are. God gives the ability for us to evolve, right, and to through reincarnation, which is actually one of the mechanisms that these justice makers. I didn't mention here. I'm glad that you brought this, so it remind me. The justice makers, they are very aware of the mechanism of reincarnation. What happens to how Leo came from that life back there to this life, and why does he look like this now? Who are the family members? Who are the people who are connected with him? Much so because they knew the wife of Gumercindo, they knew the wife of the other individuals and their shortcomings, which was what? Jealousy, right?
Mm.
Okay, so that was just a parenthesis there. So yes, every let's say decade, as you said, right, um, have their corruption, right? And this is one of the points that I believe that Manuel de Miranda wants to make in terms of, let's try this, let's push the envelope a little bit more, let's try this more, let's try that, and then we give ourselves away into these atrocities that are out there, these difficult moments that we create ourselves, and then what we have to do, create laws. They're very repressive. We have to hold the horses, back, saying, "Oh my goodness, we don't want to get into this, into this, deep hole again, right?" So we start creating things and doing things to ourselves, very detrimental to one another as well, because we're afraid, instead of teaching ourselves that, why do we have to get here? Why do we have to do this? Right? Let us uh, let us change this strategy, as we said earlier. Why go into um, destructive behaviors when we saw perhaps that different, very, very different destructive behaviors have led us to where we are right now, right? I'll give an example to illustrate what I'm saying. Why go and continue with the program of, let's say, gain of function, and create a new virus that can, hit society and create more problems in our society? I know I took a huge step here, but it can happen, right? So we can learn from the past behaviors. And the reason I said earlier that I'm glad that you said this is because every decade have, let's say, the shortcomings, right? And what happens to the decade after? They stop and say, "Oh my gosh, no, I don't want to do that. Perhaps I'm gonna do something else." But that was crazy what my parents did, or my grandparents did, right? But now I also have to live my life. I'm gonna do my own mistakes. Why do we have to get into that? Let's stop, think, and say enough is enough, right? But it takes a lot of effort. I know it's easy to say. I know it's everyone wants to live their life, especially teenagers nowadays, since we're talking about, the different things that are coming out, right? We see kids also thinking, "Oh, you did your own mistakes." Yes, we did, but learn from it. The best way for us to live our lives is to learn by the mistakes of others. And I say this as an example because I had two older brothers. And one thing that I think it was my mentor saying to me, "Look, don't do what they did because you know that they got in trouble. You already seen it. Don't do the same thing." And it was hard for me because it stopped me. It was good for me because it stopped me from doing a lot of things. However, I also felt like I don't have my time. I don't have my, but it saved me from several issues that I didn't have to suffer from, right? Nowadays, I look back and I say, thank you, dear mentor. Thank you, dear Jesus, for putting that message in my mind, in my heart, right? And also I bless my brothers because they were examples for me. Not so good, but they were examples in life for me not to follow. And I follow many other things that they do in life, and I'm very proud of them as well. So thanks for the question. I hope it helps.
Yes, a great, Leo. Yes. We have a long question here from our dear Yasko. I mean, it's not a long question; it's a short question, but she gives like a preamble first, so we can put everybody in the same page. And for that, we are glad, right, Yasko? She said, "Hi, Leo. Great reminder for workers in the Spirit Center and movement. Excess vanity combined with lack in studying and in studying the codification make workers careless regarding the service offered, causing real harm, leading to health and family distress, broken relationships, etc. What will be the recommendation on how to minimize or catch this occurrence before the damage is made?" I guess go toward the first question that we made, but Yaska elaborate much better here,
No, but this
right?
is important, Daniel, and thank you, Yas, for the question because um, we forget the purpose, right? We forget the purpose that we're in the spirit to center, right? And it's not to exalt ourselves. It's fine, I would say. I'll dare to say that it's fine to say I feel happy about myself. I feel great that I'm trying something different. However, there are other people that depend on me as well, not because I'm, it doesn't have to be somebody who's presenting a talk or anything like that, but if I am going to the Spiritus Center to sit with a group of people to study, I have to value their positions there as well, right? What is the purpose? It's just for me to learn something else, for all of us to collective, learn something, right? So when you start thinking about the main purpose, which is to serve God and be part or create this world of regeneration, but also to you know really learn something new and whatever that may be, right? Some people they go to the Spiritus Center to have a good time, and I say good time in terms of to be with like-minded that wants to worry about something else, wants to take their minds and hearts from the madness of the world, and that's fine, right? But for us who are leading the way sometimes, for us who are studying, present ourselves, we always have to remind ourselves that we're dealing with hearts, we're dealing with minds, right? And whatever we do, not that we expect others or that people are expecting others to be for us to be perfect, but whatever we do will also affect their lives, right? So yes, it's important that you bring this. I hope it helps, and the message that I would give, that I try to give myself as well, is to ask, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of a mediumistic meeting, of a treatment meeting? What's the purpose of a Saturday when we come and we talk about these elements over here, right? And many others.
Yes, yes. Um, Leo, I know that our time is almost up, but we have two questions that I would like to go because it's very important. The first one is from um, Kissing, is a follow-up question, and Chris, we analyze with Chris. Chris also put a very nice question. Um, this is more like regards to a passage in the book. Leo, can you elaborate on this statement? What's intrigued me the most, and quote, the most was to realize that this prosecutor didn't need to settle any debt to set any debt between them. Sorry about I couldn't.
No, that's okay. Very good question. The what Dr. Miranda mentioned is that Mr. Miranda, excuse me, says is that they in the most of the cases that we see is that there's something that needs to be adjusted between these individuals, right? The obsessor and the obsessed, right? And 99% of the time, we see these examples bringing to us saying, look, A person did this in the past, now is paying the consequences because B person is coming back and is attacking A person, right? Very straightforward. In this case here, the attacks are happening just because Leo is trying to become a better person. We have nothing connected from our past. The justice makers is latching in on the worker of a spiritus center because they're doing good work, because they do not want the good work to continue. Once more, you remind me of something that I didn't bring here directly. These justice makers, they are horrified of listening the word our master Jesus, of being reminder of Jesus, or just saying the word. During the treatment, what happens is when it's interesting because the treatment is actually held by Euripides Barçanufo, actually. And when Euripides Barçanufo says the word Jesus, they go crazy. They like literally they lose it. I mean, it's just that crazy because again, these were spirits who had a very difficult moment during the Inquisitions. Many of us were there, and many of us were pushing, these spirits to madness based on what we did. And if you go back and read the chapter 12, we will see what the ladies, right, and what the husbands were doing in the past, right? Again, I'm going back to a case where there was a connection in the past. But what they're saying here that these justice makers, they latch themselves onto people who simply want to do goodness, who simply says or gets up in the morning and prays for our Master Jesus to help us.
Very good, very good. Also, Leo, just to add a little bit on this, it is a individual prosecution, but also a prosecution to the institution, right? Because that institution also is helping others, right? So
Mhm,
the way to stop the work that the institution provide is go um, and attack the work of the institution, right? And the
mhm,
best way to do that is attacking the family, right? Like, I'm not saying the best way, but this is like something that's not new, right? If we look at history,
mhm,
kingdom, government, um, people in this social position, their life are destroyed because conflict in family, right? In their own family, right? So it is like a strategy that it is well known, but it seems that we don't pay attention much on that, right? We sometimes we put ourselves in a victim mode that why this happen, but also that is the work of the institution, right? That is providing helping to others that is need, right? So that's
If
a
they're
good.
together, they will stand, right?
Exactly, exactly. Oh,
Divided, they will fall.
perfect. That's a good reminder. Yes, that's great. To finalize, Leo, this is Chris put this question is related to the last slides. He said, "I've been thinking of the moral persons passage 8." Thank you, Chris. That's good. So if we think about that, so we are already like in the pathway to work in ourselves, right? Why are there so many people lately who seems to prefer immoral people instead of moral ones? Very good question.
Because that's how they are vibrating. That's how they connect. You wouldn't be here, Chris, listening to this or having interacting even, right? Because you made a question, an amazing question. If we're not vibrating in terms of spiritism, perhaps you like guitar, I like violin, right? We have our differences, yes, but we have something in common. And the reason these individuals are being chosen, right? Because the choser is vibrating the same way. And it shouldn't be, and it's not, it shouldn't be any different, right? Because they also are coming from lower vibrations until something happens that they will turn and say, there's something greater, right? Then sometimes it happens a little late in life where, during, because of a illness or perhaps a difficulty that a family member goes through. And then they was like, there's much more to life than this, right? Then watch shows. I mean, I'll give an example. The shows that we see nowadays on TV, I'm sorry to say, but 90% are very low orders, right? The videos that we come in contact with the social media, the things that are on social media, there are some good things, there are a lot of good things happening, but we're not that selective, unfortunately, right? And it's happening. And I'll finalize with one thing. I do study, for my master's, I do study a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of open doors, if you can say, in terms of critical infrastructures. And one of the ways that uh, destruction happens, whether man-made or natural destruction, right, happens, is through our vulnerabilities. And I think that Mr. Miranda explained really well that these difficulties that were happening to us, or perhaps the reason why people are choosing more the negative stuff out there, is because of vulnerabilities, right? It's because of the open doors that we leave ourselves. If we were to close them, perhaps there'll still be destruction. And I don't want to be so live in a perfect world or paint a picture that it doesn't exist, but perhaps a lot of difficult things would happen, but at least the mitigation part of it would be much easier and much faster, because we would be, as Daniel said earlier today, we would be more attentive to the mechanism, and by knowing the mechanism, if something happens, we can change it right after. We can rehabilitate ourselves much faster. So for that, I think for all of you, for the questions, for connecting with us tonight. Daniel, thanks for presenting and all the work. And
No,
next
you
month,
presented.
no, presenting me.
You present. I just moderate here. I'm just like,
Be the
uh,
moderator. Okay.
be the moderator. Yeah. And also, thank you. I mean, like, bring this and break down all this information. I know that this is kind of a highlight, right? You, you didn't like put all the information here from the book in the slide, but you catch the essential. And for that, thank you so much for the time that you have been putting to highlight each chapter of this book. Is very helpful for everyone, spiritists, not spiritists, those that are curious to know, how spirit can interfere in our lives, the influence of spirits, and also the influence that we exert to one another, right? So we have a lot of, thank you, Leo, great presentation here. I'm not going to go to all the feedback, but everybody is very excited and wow about about all this information. And we're going to be here waiting next month for continuation of chapter 13 and 14, right? So
Yes.
for that, Leo, let's finalize this beautiful presentation with our final prayer, and I guess you can lead us to the conclusion of this service.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to take the moment to give thanks to Manuel de Miranda, all the other spirits on the beyond as well, Divaldo Franco, all the workers of the Mansion of the Way as well, helping to develop this work, to bring this parallel to us. Right, it's an amazing work. So if it wasn't for work that they do, we wouldn't be here talking about this. We wouldn't be here with these highlights. So thank you for all of them. And we thank our Master Jesus for bringing us together, first and foremost, on a new note of life, on a new ideal to rehabilitate ourselves, to give us the enlightenment that we need to continue with our lives. A little reminder to change our behaviors, to change how we choose what's beautiful in the world, and to change what's inside of us, little by little, with the work that we do every day. Collectively, we will bring this world to a world of regeneration. With your help, dear Master Jesus, and the guidance, the love of our light, our Creator, our God. May all the institutions all around the world that provide services like the Spiritist centers, religious, those who provide the help with the physical, the garments, the help with food, the help with energy, resources. May them be blessed. May the teachers be blessed as well. May those who work to bring us comfort by keeping us safe, to tirelessly defend our freedom in whichever way possible, be also blessed. And may we all be thankful for this planet of trials and expiation in the now, and to be part of the work to bring into a regenerative mode. We thank you, dear Lord, and so be it.